Congratulations, you've just become an Inquisitor. But don't get too excited because, well, I don't think you're going to last very long. In this video, we're diving deep in what it actually feels like to live as an Inquisitor, and you'll feel all like you're walking in their boots. So grab a snack, get comfortable, and let the galaxy fade around you. Now, let's begin. So, after the fireworks of Order 66 died down and the smoke started to clear over the Jedi Temple, the Emperor and Vader had a problem. It turns out wiping out an entire galaxy-wide organization of space wizards isn't as easy as just pressing a button. You can't flip a switch and have every single Jedi magically vanish. Some Jedi were off in the Outer Rim, cut off from the comms, doing who knows what on some backwater planet. Others were just too tough, too clever, or just plain lucky. They were out there, scattered, hiding, probably terrified out of their minds, trying to figure out how to live a life they were never trained for. And for Palpatine, a single surviving Jedi was like a single spark in a fuel depot. Unacceptable. So what are your options? You've got Vader, the ultimate weapon, but the guy is one man. A terrifying, unstoppable force of nature, sure, but still, just one man. He can't be in 1,000 places at once. He's got a whole empire to help run, fleets to command, and let's be honest, a serious need for some quality back-to-tank time. Sending him after every rumoured Jedi hiding on some backwater rock is like using a super laser to kill a mouse. It's inefficient. And sending the regular military. Stormtroopers are great for intimidating civilians and putting down straightforward rebellions. But hunting a Force user? It's a joke. A Jedi can feel their intent, sense their patrols, and move through a city like a ghost. You'd lose entire legions and have nothing to show for it. It's a waste of resources. This is where the true, calculating genius of Palpatine's evil really shines. A solution that would cause maximum psychological damage. And that's the birth of the Inquisitorius. This wasn't a public institution. You wouldn't find their offices on Coruscant. They had no public budget, no official chain of command on the Imperial org chart. They were a phantom, a secret so deep that most high-ranking Imperial officers only knew them as whispers, as ghost stories you told your colleagues after one too many drinks. The very uncertainty about their existence was a weapon in itself. Their mandate was brutally simple: find the surviving Jedi and eliminate them. But the how is where the horror truly begins. The recruitment strategy was, and I don't use this word lightly, a masterpiece of cruelty. The Empire decided that the best weapon to use against a Jedi was another Jedi. Think about the sheer, gut-wrenching brilliance of that. You take the very ideals of the light side, compassion, peace, knowledge, and you twist them into a weapon of hatred and fear. You use a Jedi's own connection to the Force to hunt their friends. So how do you get a Jedi to switch sides after you've just murdered all their friends and family? You don't convince them. You don't give them a compelling PowerPoint presentation on the benefits of the dark side. You break them. The process usually started with capture. The ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau, with its web of spies and informants, would pick up a thread, a strange rumour from a remote world, a person with incredible reflexes working as a mechanic, a mysterious hermit who seems to know things they shouldn't. They'd follow the thread. Sometimes they'd set a trap, using a Force-sensitive child as bait. Other times, they'd just corner the Jedi with overwhelming force, and then Vader would arrive. The recruitment pitch was an ultimatum delivered by a walking nightmare. You're lying on the floor, broken, your own lightsaber shattered next to you. The man who was once the hero of the Republic, now a monstrous giant in black armor, stands over you. His breathing is the only sound in the room, and he offers you a choice: join or die. They take these fallen Jedi and pour all their hatred and Sith philosophy into them. They'd break them down, physically and mentally, and then rebuild them into something new. A weapon. It's efficient, it's cruel, and it sends a message to any other survivors, your friends, your colleagues. They could be the ones hunting you tomorrow. They aren't Sith. Don't ever make that mistake. Palpatine and Vader would never allow a rival. The Inquisitors are tools, disposable assets. They're given a taste of the dark side, just enough to make them powerful, but not enough to ever truly challenge their masters. They're attack dogs, well-fed, well-trained, but always on a leash, and always aware that if they misbehave, they'll be put down. This brings us to the structure, which is a pyramid designed by a sadist. It's a system built entirely on fear and paranoia. At the absolute peak, there is Darth Vader, the final authority. His word is law, and his law is often delivered via lightsaber. You don't report to him with paperwork, you report with results. Failure in his eyes has one very permanent consequence: Directly beneath him is the Grand Inquisitor. This guy is the CEO of your daily misery. The lore suggests he was a former Jedi Temple Guard. Let's just sit with that for a second. A Temple Guard knew everything. He knew the secret passages in the temple, the security protocols, the archives, the combat forms, the weaknesses in Jedi philosophy. His knowledge made him the perfect manager for this hellish enterprise. He was the one who ran the training, assigned the missions, and acted as the direct line to Vader. He was the face of your oppression every single day. Then you have the numbered agents, the second sister, the fifth brother, the ninth sister. The numbers are cold, impersonal, and that's the whole point. Your name is gone, your past is erased, your identity is now your function. This system is deliberately designed to be unstable. It's inspired by the Sith principle of the strong dominating the weak. Your number isn't a permanent rank, it's a target. If you, as the 10th brother, decide you're stronger, faster, and a better hunter than the 7th sister, you can challenge her. These challenges were often to the death, or at least to a level of injury that was functionally the same thing. This created a constant simmering civil war within the ranks. You couldn't trust your colleagues. The person you went on a mission with might be planning to shove you into a reactor core the second your back was turned. This constant competition ensured that the Inquisitors were always sharp, always hungry, and most importantly, never united enough to pose a threat to Vader or the Emperor. It kept them isolated, paranoid, and focused on each other instead of their masters. Their home, their base of operations, was the Fortress Inquisitorius on the ocean moon of Nur. We'll explore this place in nightmarish detail later, but for now, just know it was a submerged fortress. Dark, cold and silent, except for the hum of machinery and the occasional scream from a training room. It was a physical manifestation of the program itself, hidden, pressurized, and inescapable. It wasn't a home, it was a prison. But how did they actually find the Jedi? It was a multi-layered approach, a galactic dragnet. First, you had the brute force method, data. The Empire seized all Jedi archives. They had lists of every Jedi Knight, Padawan, and even younglings. They knew names, species, homeworlds, known associates. They would cross-reference this with planetary census data, shipping manifests, and energy readings. If a planet suddenly showed a spike in unexplained energy signatures or a pattern of miraculous events, it got flagged. Second, you had the ISB's network of informants. They paid good money for information. A bartender on Nar Shaddaa sees a patron who never loses at Sabak. He calls his ISB contact. A farmer on Dantooine has a new farmhand who can calm a raging nerf with just a touch. That's a tip. The Empire turned the entire galaxy into a neighborhood watch, with a credit reward for turning in your local space wizard. Third, and this is the most esoteric, was the Force itself. The Inquisitors were trained to sense echoes in the Force. A Jedi using their powers creates a ripple, like a stone thrown into a pond. A trained Inquisitor, attuned to the dark side, could feel that ripple. It was a galactic game of hide and seek, where the Seekers could feel you breathing. The final method was the most insidious, hunting the children. The Jedi younglings and other Force-sensitive infants scattered during the Purge were the highest priority. They were malleable, easier to break and mold into perfect servants. The Inquisitors were often sent to kidnap these children, dragging them back to Nur to be indoctrinated into the next generation of hunters. It was a way to ensure the cycle never ended. So, when you step back and look at it, the Inquisitorius was so much more than just a group of villains with cool spinning lightsabers. It was a symbol of the Empire's thoroughness. It was a psychological operation designed to demoralize any potential resistance. It was a machine built from the broken bodies and souls of its enemies, a machine that fed on its own paranoia and fear. It was Palpatine's way of proving that no one was safe, that hope itself could be corrupted, and that the darkness would use every tool, every memory, every last shred of your past to hunt you down. For the individual who put on that armor, who took a number and a red lightsaber, it wasn't a promotion. It was a damnation. The title of Inquisitor was a life sentence in a prison without walls, where the warden was your own self-loathing, and the only way to stay alive was to become a monster. And the hunt was just beginning. Okay, now, we've mentioned a few names before. Let's pull up a chair and run through the roster. It's a grim list, but it tells you everything you need to know about the job security of an Inquisitor. Which is to say, there is none. Your career path has exactly two possible endings: die by Jedi hands, or die by Vaders. There is no third option or retirement party on some quiet outer rim world. We have to start at the top, with the Grand Inquisitor. As we already know, he was a former Jedi Temple guard. That's a pretty specific and trusted position. You're not a frontline warrior, you're a guardian of the most sacred place in the Jedi Order. For him to fall, it speaks to a deep, deep sense of betrayal. He felt the Jedi had lost their way, that they were hypocrites. So when the Empire offered him a new purpose, he became a true believer. He drank the dark side Kool-Aid and asked for seconds. He was in charge of the whole operation, the direct line to Vader, and he took his job deadly seriously. His end is a perfect example of Imperial irony. A big misconception is that the Grand Inquisitor actually died in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. In reality, he survived the third sister Reva's lightsaber stab and later appeared in Rebels. He was a master duelist, a tactical genius, and he was hunting the crew of the Ghost, specifically the Jedi Kanan Jarrus and his Padawan, Ezra Bridger. He had Kanan cornered aboard the Sovereign, but Kanan rallied, reclaimed his strength, and defeated him. Rather than face Vader's wrath, the Grand Inquisitor let go and fell into the reactor. And you know what the most telling part of his death was? His last words. He didn't curse Kanan's name. He didn't swear vengeance. He said, "There are some things far more frightening than death." He was looking right at Kanan, but he wasn't talking about him. He was talking about the prospect of having to float back to Vader as a ghost and explain how he let a Padawan and a struggling Jedi Knight take him down. In his final moments, the fear of his boss's disappointment was a bigger, more real terror than the void of death itself. Let that sink in. That's the culture Vader cultivated. Then we have the one whose story is just a straight-up tragedy, the second sister, Trilla Siduri. Trilla breaks your heart because she shows you the Empire's process at its most cruel and personal. She wasn't a willing convert. She was a Jedi Padawan who survived Order 66, only to be captured. The Empire didn't just torture her physically, they broke her spirit. How? They captured her Jedi Master, Sia Junda, and they tortured Sia right in front of Trilla, over and over. They made Trilla watch as her mentor, the person she looked up to, was broken. They forced Sia to betray Trilla, to give her up, just to make the pain stop. That betrayal, that profound despair, is what curdled inside Trilla and forged the second sister. Her hatred wasn't a generic, dark side energy. It was personal, bitter, and directed at the Jedi Order itself for its weakness, and at her master for failing her. She became one of the most effective Inquisitors, ruthless, cunning, a master of psychological warfare. Her entire existence was a testament to the Empire's philosophy. The best way to break someone is to use the shattered pieces of their old life as the tools. Her main quarry was Cal Kestis, another Padawan survivor. She chased him across the galaxy, and she was always one step ahead. She understood him because she was him, or at least what he could have become. And in the end, they ended up in the Fortress Inquisitorius, on Noor, and then Darth Vader walked in. He wasn't there to give her a promotion or a pat on the back. He was there to take over. And in that moment, facing the literal embodiment of all her suffering, something in Trilla shattered again. But this time, it broke back towards the light. Cal, freed in the chaos, fought her one last time, and he offered her redemption. He saw the person she was before the Empire got its claws into her. He offered her a way out, and for a beautiful, heartbreaking second, you could see it. The mask of the second sister slipped, and Trilla Siduri was there again. She was tired, she was ready to let it go, to come home. And Vader, without a word of acknowledgement for her service, without a moment of hesitation, killed her. In the end, after all the pain, all the hunting, all the darkness, she was just another piece of evidence to be disposed of. Her story is the ultimate lesson for any Inquisitor. Your loyalty and your effectiveness do not matter. Full stop. Now, let's talk about the duo that was like a bad homicidal comedy act, the fifth brother and the seventh sister. The fifth brother was this grim, no-nonsense, perpetually scowling guy. He had this deep voice and this air of brute force inevitability about him. The seventh sister was his opposite. Cunning, manipulative, she used little probe droids to do her scouting, and had this sinister, playful charm that was somehow more terrifying than the fifth brother's bluntness. They worked together for a while, a classic good cop, bad cop routine. if both cops were deeply evil dark side assassins. They were a constant threat to Ezra and Kanan, always showing up at the worst possible moment. But their end was, well, it was embarrassingly quick. It was a lesson in knowing your place in the food chain. They tracked the rebels to the planet Malachor, a Sith world that's basically a galactic death trap, a tomb for ancient horrors. They found their prey in a tense standoff with another figure, the former Sith Lord, Maul. Now, Maul was old, half crazy, and had been living on his own rage for decades. But he was still Maul. He was a product of the old Sith training, a genuine article. The fifth brother and seventh sister, in their arrogance, saw another target. They picked a fight. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Maul, even in his diminished state, was on a completely different level. He didn't engage in a prolonged duel. He dismantled them. It was over in seconds. And we can't forget the ninth sister. She was a real brute of a woman, tough as nails, a genuine brawler. She was so tough she lost her legs at some point before we even meet her and got a pair of massive cybernetic ones, which just made her even more of a tank. She wasn't subtle. She relied on pure power and a particular talent for reading surface thoughts, which made her a nightmare in a fight. She could anticipate your moves before you made them. She faced Cal Kestis twice, and her story is a lesson in pure, dumb resilience. The first time was on the forest planet of Kashyyyk. It was a brutal fight among the giant trees, and Cal managed to cut off one of her cybernetic hands and send her falling from a great height into the jungle below. Everyone, Cal included, assumed she was dead. But nope, she was too stubborn, too full of hate, to die that easily. She popped up again later, with a new cybernetic hand and a serious grudge. She fought Cal again, and this time, Cal was stronger, more in control. He beat her for good. Her story is a lesson in the fact that in the Inquisitorius, even surviving a Jedi isn't enough. The job will just send you right back into the meat grinder until it finally finishes you off. Then there are the others, the ones whose stories are shorter, but just as final. The eighth brother. You have to feel a little sorry for him, mostly because of his terrible equipment choices. He was the one who used his spinning double-bladed lightsaber as a helicopter. It was as ridiculous as it sounds. He was also on Malachor, and when the structure they were on began to collapse, he tried to make his escape using his sabercopter. The thing failed, sputtered out, and he fell, screaming into the abyss of the planet. A death as utterly ridiculous and undignified as his chosen mode of transport. A lesson in not trusting Imperial R&D with your life. The sixth brother. He had a weird, multi-bladed, segmented lightsaber that looked like a metal flower of death. He was hunting a young Force-sensitive girl on the planet Rada, but he had no idea who he was really up against. His prey was being protected by Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka, who had survived Order 66 and later faced Darth Vader and lived. The sixth brother never stood a chance. She didn't just beat him, she completely outclassed him. In their duel, she used the Force to pull his unstable lightsaber apart, overloading the crystals and turning the weapon's own energy against him. He died in the explosion, a stark demonstration of the difference between a real, battle-tested Force warrior and the Empire's mass-produced dark side knockoffs. The 10th brother, Imperial, is a great example of the internal dangers. He was arrogant, and his arrogance led him into a disaster of his own making. During a mission to hunt a group of Jedi survivors, Imperial Purge troopers, driven by panic and mistrust, turned their weapons on the Inquisitors themselves. The 10th brother was cut down by his own troops. It shows that the infighting and paranoia inside the Inquisitorius were just as deadly as any Jedi. Vader encouraged that kind of toxic competition. It kept them weak and divided. Even the ones we know less about, like the fourth sister, glimpsed during Imperial operations years later, simply vanished from the records. The Empire didn't keep meticulous files on their losses, lost during operations. It all meant the same thing. Another Inquisitor had reached their expiration date. And then there's the rare exception, the one that got away, the third sister, Reva Savanda. Her story is unique because she had a secret. She was a youngling who survived Anakin Skywalker's massacre at the Jedi Temple. Her entire life as an Inquisitor was a long, deep cover mission to get close enough to Darth Vader to kill him. Her rage was real, but it was directed at the right target. In the end, after confronting Vader and being soundly defeated, after having her own trauma turned against her, She had a chance to take revenge by killing his son, Luke, but she couldn't do it. She let go of her hatred, she chose a different path, and she walked away. She's the anomaly, the one who broke the cycle and survived. But for every Reaver, there are a dozen other Inquisitors whose names are just forgotten entries on the Empire's casualty list. The pattern is so clear, it's almost monotonous. They all die, the Grand Inquisitor. Defeated by a Jedi, he underestimated, and choosing death rather than face Vader's wrath. The second sister, killed by her own master after faltering at the moment of redemption. The fifth brother and seventh sister, cut down by a Sith Lord they were too arrogant to fear. The ninth sister, returning scarred and cybernetic, only to fall to Cal Kestis for good on Coruscant. The eighth brother, undone by gravity and bad engineering. The sixth brother, annihilated by a former Jedi who was in a completely different league. They die because they're caught in a trap of the Empire's own design. They're given just enough power to be dangerous, but never enough to be truly powerful. They're taught to hate, but not to control that hatred. They're middle management in the business of fear. And when the real executives, the Vaders, the Mauls, the Ahsokas of the galaxy, decide to take over the account, or when the product, the Jedi, fights back effectively, they're the first to be liquidated. Their fates are the ultimate punchline to the dark joke of the Inquisitorius. The Empire promised them power. It promised them purpose. It promised them a place in the New Order. But all it ever gave them was a target on their back, a spinning red lightsaber, and a one-way ticket to a forgotten grave at the bottom of an ocean, or a disintegrating wreck on a dead world. They were weapons, and weapons are not meant to last. They are meant to be used until they break, get lost, or are thrown away. So, you survived. That's the first thought, isn't it? It's not a thought of victory. It's a quiet, shaky, disbelieving whisper in the back of your mind that somehow, against all odds, you are still breathing. Maybe you are on a remote planet, mediating a border dispute between two clans who've been fighting for generations. Maybe you were in the Jedi Temple itself. You saw the gunships descend. You heard the blaster fire that wasn't meant for droids. You fought your way out, through familiar hallways now painted with the bodies of your friends, your teachers, the younglings you were supposed to protect. However it happened, you're here, you're alive, and the galaxy is on fire. The first few days are a blur. It's pure animal instinct. You run, you stow away in a cargo hold smelling of stale Tabana gas and Wookiee fur. It doesn't matter. You just need to get away. Every blip on a scanner is a Star Destroyer. Every uniform is a squad of clones coming to finish the job. The Force isn't a comfort anymore. It's a vast, empty cathedral filled with ghosts, and you're the only one left inside. You find a place to hide, a farming moon where the biggest news is the price of blue milk. You get a job, something simple, something that doesn't require you to think, to feel, or to remember. You keep your head down. Your lightsaber? It's not a weapon of justice anymore. It's a death sentence. You bury it. You learn new rules. Rule 1, trust no one. Not the friendly Ithorian who offers you a hot meal. Not the Twi'lek who smiles at you in the cantina. Anyone could be an informant. The Empire pays well for whispers about strangers with strange luck. Rule 2, never ever use the Force. It's like lighting a signal flare in the dark. You feel a crate is about to fall on a coworker? Let it fall. You need to make a tricky jump across a chasm? Find a ladder. You have a feeling, a gut instinct screaming at you to avoid a certain starport. You listen to that one. That's the only part of your old life you're allowed to keep. Rule 3, forget who you were. The Jedi are extinct. Their fire has gone out of the universe. You are not a guardian of peace and justice, but it's a fragile peace, a house built on sand. And eventually, want it or not, they will catch you, my man. And they did. So the ship touches down. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's a triple-layered assault. First, the salt spray of a vast ocean. Then, underneath that, the sharp tang of ozone from the constant electrical storms in the atmosphere. And finally, cutting through it all, a sterile metallic scent like a surgical suite or a clean room. It's the smell of the Empire itself. Wildness and chaos, sanitized and controlled. The air is thick, so humid it feels like you're breathing through a wet cloth. You're marched down the ramp by your captor, and you get your first soul-crushing look at Nur. It's an ocean moon, and I mean it's only an ocean. There are no continents, no islands, not even a stubborn atoll breaking the surface. Just water, a vast, endless, dark grey expanse of it, stretching to a hazy, oppressive horizon. The sky is a swirling canvas of bruised purples and sickly greens, with no sun or stars to orient yourself. It's perpetually the grim hour before a storm breaks. The only sounds are the low, constant moan of the wind weaving between the spires of the fortress and the slow, rhythmic, booming crash of waves against the immense structure you're standing on. It's not a welcoming sound, it's a threat. It's the planet itself telling you that you don't belong here. And the structure, that's the Fortress Inquisitorius. It's not a castle, it's a geological event made of metal, a massive dark spike of durasteel and black rock, a brutalist's spear thrust up from the abyssal plains far below. You realise, with a sinking feeling, that the landing platform is just the very tip, the absolute peak of this monstrous iceberg. 90% of this place is submerged, hidden in the eternal dark of the deep ocean. This place was built to dominate, to defy, to intimidate. It is a middle finger raised against the natural world. You're led inside. You don't get a grand tour, you're processed. You're shoved into a sonic shower that strips the grime of your old life away, and you're given a set of grey utilitarian fatigues. No insignia, not yet. Then you're thrown into your cell. It's not a dungeon with straw and rats. That would imply a certain rustic charm. This is worse. It's clinical. A perfect durasteel cube, 3 meters by 3 meters. A magnetic lock on the door, a slot for a nutrient paste tray that opens and closes on a precise schedule, a single recessed light in the ceiling that emits a pale, cold glow and never, ever turns off. The first lesson is written on the walls. Your comfort is irrelevant. Your needs are secondary to our purpose. The first few cycles, you quickly lose any sense of day or night in this unchanging box, are a masterclass in isolation. No one speaks to you. The food slot opens with a clatter, you take the tray, and it closes again. You see no one. You have nothing to read, nothing to do, no one to talk to. You're alone with the hum and the cold and your own thoughts. And your thoughts, right now, are your most effective torturers. Then the real training begins. You're taken to a vast, circular chamber deep within the fortress's submerged levels. The air is different here. This room has been a graveyard for the pride of countless Jedi, and waiting for you in the center is the Grand Inquisitor. He's taller and more imposing up close. His pallor is almost ghost-like, and those intense, sulfur-yellow eyes don't just observe you, they dissect you. They look past your face, past your fear, and start mapping the fault lines in your spirit. You are here because you failed. It's a clinical diagnosis. Delivered with the flat finality of a coroner, the Jedi Order was a monument to failure. Its compassion was a strategic blindness. Its code was a cage designed to keep you weak. You cling to its memory because the chains are familiar, but the cage is gone. Your first lesson is obedience. Not to me, not to the Empire. Obedience to the unchangeable reality of the galaxy. The reality is that the Dark Lord of the Sith commands the stars. The reality is that your only path to any semblance of power, to mere survival, lies in kneeling before this truth. And then the lessons turn practical, and they are built on a foundation of pain. It's not always physical, though that comes often enough. Sometimes it's a more intimate violation. He will force his way into your mind with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. He will find a cherished memory, a moment of peace in the temple gardens, a word of praise from your master, and he will corrupt it. He'll make you see the pride in that praise as a seed of the dark side. He'll make you see the peace as laziness, a refusal to engage with the galaxy's true, brutal nature. He shows you visions, the temple burning, but this time you're not a victim. You're standing with the invaders, your hand guiding the torch. He whispers the names and last known locations of other Jedi survivors, making you complicit in their eventual hunt, tempting you with the power that such knowledge represents. He finds your deepest shame, the Padawan you couldn't protect, the selfish thought you once had, the time you failed, and he doesn't just remind you of it, he amplifies it. He makes you live inside that moment of failure, looping it over and over until the pain of it is a physical thing, a fire in your veins begging to be released. The physical training is a brutal, unforgiving recalibration of everything you know. It has no time for the elegant defensive forms of Sorasu or the precise dueling style of Makashi. This is about raw, untamed, overwhelming aggression. He teaches you to take that fear, that anger, that bottomless well of pain they've been digging inside you, all that volatile fuel, and you learn to weaponize it. You're given a heavy, brutish training saber, and you spar against remotes that fire stinging energy bolts, against probe droids that try to shock you, and against the other initiates. This is another layer of the system's cruel genius. You're not fighting the Grand Inquisitor, you're fighting the third brother, who is just as scared as you are. You're dueling the seventh sister, who looks at you not as a fellow prisoner, but as a rung on the ladder she needs to climb. You're all trapped in the same pit, but you're forced to be each other's oppressors. Every bruise, every burn, every humiliating defeat that leaves you sprawled on the cold floor is administered by someone who shares your cage. It doesn't breed camaraderie, it breeds a festering, specific hatred. You stop directing your rage solely at the Empire and start reserving a special, venomous portion of it for the person in the cell next to yours. It systematically destroys any chance of alliance or rebellion from within. The Grand Inquisitor observes it all from the sidelines. He offers critique, never encouragement. Your anger is a scattered blast, he'll say. Focus it. A lightsaber blade is more lethal than a blaster bolt, or you are holding back. Your opponent's life is a coin you must be willing to spend. And through it all, the fortress itself is your unblinking warden. The endless, groaning hum is the soundtrack of your new life. The cold seeps into your bones until you can't remember ever feeling warm. You are buried alive in this metal coffin at the bottom of an alien sea, with millions of tons of black water pressing in on all sides. The only reminder that an outside universe still exists is the occasional deep bones tremor that runs through the structure. This is your existence now, an endless cycle, the cold isolation of the cell, the brutal, painful crucible of the training hall, and the psychological dissection that happens in the moments in between. They are not trying to convince you that their way is right. They are making the very concepts of right and wrong seem like childish fantasies. All that is real is power. All that is real is survival. And with every passing cycle, the voice in your head that whispers the Jedi code becomes fainter, more distant, a radio signal from a star that has long since died. It's being replaced by a colder, simpler, more insistent thought, one that beats in time with the hum of the fortress and the rhythm of your own heart. I will not be broken. Or more terrifyingly, a new thought begins to take root. What if being broken is the only way to become strong? You're past the screaming, past the drills, past the tests that broke half the recruits who walked in beside you. At this point, the Empire already knows what you're worth. You're alive, which means you've got something they can use. Now it's time for the real work, turning you from a survivor into something the galaxy will actually fear. They call it the making of an Inquisitor. Sounds grand, like a ceremony or something fancy, right? It's not. It's more like factory work. The Empire doesn't deal in tradition. They deal in production. You're here to be remade, not celebrated. The first thing they do is strip away whatever scraps of Jedi identity you might have had left. If you still had your lightsaber, that's long gone too. What's funny is, some of the others still keep pieces of their old lives hidden away. You can tell by the way they talk. They still use Jedi words like balance or harmony, and the instructors hate that. They make you run drills until those words leave your vocabulary naturally. The instructors here aren't like the stormtrooper officers you've seen. These people are colder. Most are Imperial loyalists who've seen things they'll never talk about. Some are fallen Jedi themselves. Veterans of the Purge who broke early and bent the knee. And that's the goal, isn't it? To get you to that same place. Every day begins the same. Low lighting, cold air, and the same mantra echoing through the fortress halls. The Jedi betrayed the Republic. The Jedi created chaos. The Empire brought peace. You hear it over and over until it stops sounding like propaganda and starts feeling like background noise, the kind that never really turns off. You're fed history lessons rewritten by the Empire, Jedi uprisings that never happened, betrayals that never took place, and heroic tales of clone troopers dying to protect the galaxy from their so-called generals. At first you notice the lies, but after weeks of the same routine, you stop caring. The mind can only fight so long before it gives in. That's the whole point. Still, you're not just sitting in classrooms. The physical trials continue, though now they're mixed with more specific conditioning. You train blindfolded to enhance your force senses. You spar against remotes that shoot real blaster bolts because apparently pain is the only teacher that leaves no room for debate. They like to say that one a lot. Some of the Inquisitors in training even start repeating it, like it's gospel. Sometimes you catch yourself saying it too. You notice your body changing. You move differently, sharper, faster. Now the real transformation, the one that seals who you've become, comes when you face the thing every Inquisitor fears and secretly craves, the bleeding of the crystal. Now, if you were still a Jedi, this would be a moment of peace. Jedi didn't find their crystals. Their crystals found them. It was a bond, a reflection of who they were. The colours of blue, green, sometimes yellow or purple, all meant something. Jedi would meditate, connect, and the crystal would sing to them through the Force. That's how it used to work. This isn't that. The Empire doesn't care about harmony. They care about dominance. They call it bleeding. To make a Kyber crystal bleed, you don't connect with it. You corrupt it. You pour every ounce of pain, rage and hate you've been storing since the Purge straight into it until it twists. It's like drowning a song in static. You sit in front of the crystal. The instructor tells you to focus on your anger. Think about everything that broke you. The faces of the clones who turned their blasters on you. The friends you lost. The lies of the Council. The betrayal of the Republic. You reach out through the Force and the crystal pushes back. It doesn't want this. It resists. But you push harder. You stop thinking and start feeling. Rage, grief, everything you buried just to survive. The crystal starts to crack, glowing brighter until the colour shifts from white to deep red. It's like you can feel it screaming. They don't give you much time to process that before moving on to the next step, your weapon. Now the thing is that the Inquisitor lightsaber is the definition of overkill. Double-bladed circular emitter, spin mode, flight mode. Yeah, it can technically let you hover for a few seconds like some sort of deadly ceiling fan. Don't laugh, people have died trying it. It's clunky, heavy and temperamental. But it's also terrifying to look at, which is all the Empire really wants. Fear's the best marketing tool they have. You assemble your weapon under supervision. Every part is coded and registered. The hilt's core contains a tracking beacon that links directly to the Fortress database. If you lose your saber, they'll know. If you run, they'll find you. It's not just your weapon, it's your leash. When you ignite it for the first time, it's rough, almost angry. The red light fills the room, and you catch your reflection on the metallic walls. You look older, meaner, like the galaxy aged you 10 years overnight. The Grand Inquisitor happens to walk by during your first ignition. He doesn't congratulate you or offer any wisdom. He just stares for a moment and says, "Your weapon belongs to the Empire. Use it well or it will be taken." And you believe him. From then on, training takes on a new focus. It's all about control of the blade, the Force and yourself. You duel other trainees, spar with droids, and occasionally face off against stormtroopers just for practice. The instructors remind you constantly that you're not Sith, not Jedi, but something in between. Tools of the dark side, but disposable ones. It's motivational in that special Imperial way. Scare you enough to make you obedient. Still, there are moments, rare ones, when you almost feel proud. The first time you deflect a blaster bolt perfectly, or when you sense an opponent's move before they make it. The power's intoxicating. The Force still answers you, though it feels different now. Heavier, darker, but alive. It listens when you command, not when you ask. Some of the others start embracing the darkness fully. They talk about it like it's liberation. "No more Jedi rules," one of them says, during lunch, half laughing. "We can finally use our power." You nod, but part of you wonders if that power's using you. The indoctrination deepens. You start each day with Sith teachings, ancient writings, holocrons of long-dead lords whispering about pain and strength. You memorize the Sith code, not because you believe in it, but because failing to recite it earns you another session with the Electra staffs. Peace is a lie, there is only passion. They love that line. They repeat it like it's the answer to every problem. You learn about Sith alchemy, enough to understand the basics of corruption. The instructors talk about channeling emotion into energy, which sounds noble until you realize it just means use your trauma as fuel. They call it enlightenment, you call it survival. And the cybernetic stuff? That never really stops. Every time you get injured, they replace more of you. Some implants enhance your reflexes, others monitor your vitals, and can remotely sedate you if you get out of line. Yeah, it's that kind of trust-based relationship. You start to wonder if there's a single Inquisitor left who's fully organic. Between the drills and the propaganda, you barely sleep. When you do, it's not peaceful. Dreams bleed into nightmares, flashes of old battles, temples burning, faces you can't save. The medics hand out sedatives, but they just make you feel disconnected, like you're floating somewhere outside your own skin. Then one day, it hits you. You realize you haven't thought about your Jedi name in weeks. You try to remember it, and can't. It's gone, erased by repetition, fear and time. You don't even know when it happened. Maybe that's the final test, the moment when the person you were dies quietly, without anyone noticing. By the time you're officially promoted to Inquisitor, you look at the new recruits being dragged in and feel something strange. Not pity exactly, but recognition. You know the steps they'll take, the pain they'll feel, the lies they'll be told. You almost want to warn them. But that's not how things work here. Everyone walks the same path alone. The Grand Inquisitor gives one last lecture about duty and discipline. Darth Vader himself might show up if you're lucky. Though lucky isn't the right word when he's in the room. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, it's enough. One sentence from him carries more weight than an entire week of training. You can feel the fear ripple through the others whenever his respirator echoes down the corridor. After the ceremony, you're dismissed back to your quarters. You place your lightsaber on the table and stare at it. The red crystal hums faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. For a moment you wonder if it remembers what it used to be, if it ever regrets what it became. Then again, maybe it doesn't matter. You're the same way now. You've learned to obey, to channel your pain into purpose. You've traded freedom for survival, and oddly enough, it feels like a fair deal. The galaxy is cruel. The Empire at least gives you a place in it. You're not a Jedi anymore, but you're not a nobody either. You're something else entirely, something the galaxy whispers about and runs from. When people hear the red hum of your blade, they don't think hope. They think run. That's your purpose now. You hunt the remnants of what you used to be. You chase ghosts, and every time you catch one, you bury another piece of your past. You are an Inquisitor, made not born, forged by fear, molded by hate, and held together by the Empire's promise of power. You tell yourself it's worth it, that you're stronger now, and maybe you are. But every time you ignite your blade, the red reflection, staring back at you, feels a little less like victory, and a little more like proof that the darkness doesn't just win, it owns you. Still, when the orders come in and the ship engines roar to life, you don't hesitate. You've got work to do. Somewhere out there, a Jedi is hiding, and the Empire doesn't tolerate hope. Not anymore. All right, your old self is a ghost, and a red lightsaber is your new shadow, but a weapon is only part of the story. An Inquisitor is a system, a living, breathing weapon system, and the Empire spares no expense in making sure that system is equipped to hunt, to track, and to never, ever let its leash be cut. Let's start with the most infamous piece of kit, the thing that screams Inquisitor from a mile away. I mentioned that before, but let's go deeper now. The spinning double-bladed lightsaber. Now this isn't a fancy glow stick. Think of it less as a sword and more as a piece of industrial machinery. The design is brutal, almost over-engineered, and it tells you everything you need to know about the people who made it. The hilt is thick, heavy, built around a high-torque gyroscopic core. It feels cold and unyielding in your hand, nothing like the warm, organic grip of a Jedi lightsaber. With a flick of a switch, that core engages, and the two halves of the blade start spinning around the central grip. It creates a whirlwind of plasma, a buzzing, shrieking disc of red light that can deflect blaster bolts from every direction or grind through a blast door. It's intimidating as hell. The sound alone is meant to instill panic. That high-pitched whine, like a swarm of angry insects, is the last thing many a Jedi survivor heard. But here's the thing they don't put in the brochures. It's a weapon of psychological warfare as much as it is a physical one. That spinning blade is a constant, visible reminder that you are not a Jedi. A Jedi's saber is a precise, elegant tool, an extension of their will. This thing, it's a power tool. It's a threshing machine for people. It's designed to overwhelm, to disorient, to announce that subtlety is dead and brute force has won the day. And it has a very practical and, frankly, sinister secondary function. That spinning mechanism, it's a training wheel for the dark side. To wield it effectively, you can't rely on finesse or the serene focus of the Jedi. You have to channel your raw emotion, your anger, your fear, your hate into the spin. You pour your fury into the gyroscope, and it rewards you with devastating power. The more you let your emotions run wild, the faster and more unpredictably it spins. It teaches you to fight with passion, with chaos, which is the exact opposite of everything the Jedi taught. The weapon itself is a lesson in Sith philosophy. It's a constant drill instructor in your hand, screaming at you to be angrier, to be more aggressive. There's also a fan theory floating around that the Empire could remotely disable an Inquisitor's lightsaber if they stepped out of line. It's never been confirmed, but it definitely fits how the Empire liked to keep everyone on a short leash. A remote signal from the Grand Inquisitor, or from a certain Dark Lord of the Sith, can shut the gyroscope down mid-spin, or worse, deactivate the blade entirely. Imagine you're in the middle of a duel, your blade is a red cyclone, and suddenly, it's just a dead metal cylinder in your hand. You're left standing there, exposed and helpless. It reminds you that your power, your very survival, is on loan from the Empire. It can be revoked in a heartbeat. You don't own your life, and you don't own your weapon. And speaking of practicalities, this thing is a nightmare to train with. The early days are just a symphony of humiliations and near-death experiences. You're learning an entirely new relationship with physics. The gyroscopic effect creates a crazy amount of torque. If your grip isn't perfect, the spinning hilt will wrench itself right out of your hands and go careening across the training room. It's also ridiculously demanding on the power cell. All that spinning and blazing red plasma eats through energy. An Inquisitor lightsaber is high maintenance, prone to overheating, shorting out, and snapping under pressure. It's a weapon that reflects its wielder and always on the verge of burning itself out. The emitters jam, the bearings seize, and sometimes the blades desynchronize, which, if you're unlucky, means you're suddenly holding a very expensive hand grenade. But the saber is only the most obvious tool. Let's talk about how you get to the hunt. You need a ride. The standard issue TIE fighter is a death trap. It's a coffin with an engine. No shields, hyperdrive, or life support to speak of. It's expendable, just like the pilot. The Empire does not see Inquisitors as expendable, not until they've outlived their usefulness, anyway. So they give us something better. Most of us get a TIE Advanced V1. Now this is a different beast. It's still got that iconic TIE scream, that hexagonal solar panel design, but it's been upgraded. It has a hyperdrive. That's the big one. It means you're not tethered to a Star Destroyer. You can go wherever the scent of a Jedi leads you, deep into the Outer Rim, without asking for permission. It has deflector shields, which is the difference between a risky maneuver and a fiery explosion. And it's got a Class 2 primary weapon, which is Imperial jargon for it hits a lot harder than a normal TIE blaster. Flying it is a dream. It's responsive, aggressive. It feels like an extension of your own will. You pour your anger into the throttle and it answers. You feel the dark side flowing through the controls. It's the closest you get to feeling free. For those few hours, alone in the cockpit, with just the hum of the engine and the silent star-dusted void, you can almost forget you're a prisoner. Almost. But that freedom is an illusion, of course. The ship's Navi computer is slave to the fortress. Every jump, every destination is logged and monitored. Try to input coordinates for a system outside of Imperial jurisdiction, or worse, a known Hutt space smuggler's den, and you'll get a very polite, very firm error message. So you fly where they tell you to fly. For bigger missions, when you're transporting prisoners or an entire squad of Purge troopers, you get a Sentinel-class landing craft. It's a brick, a utilitarian, heavily armoured brick, but it's reliable. It can land on a dime on a hostile world, disgorge its deadly cargo, and get out fast. It's not glamorous, but it gets the job done. It's the workhorse of the Inquisitorius. The interior smells like ozone, recycled air, and the faint, metallic scent of fear from the prisoners who usually ride in the back. It's a smell that gets into your clothes, into your skin. You can't wash it out. Now, let's get to what you're wearing. The armour. It's not the pristine white plastoid of a stormtrooper. It's darker, more personalised, but it's still a uniform. The bodysuit is a black temperature-regulating fibre. Over that, you have segmented plates of Durasteel alloy, usually in grey, black, or a deep crimson. It's designed for intimidation, but also for mobility. You need to flip, spin, and contort your body in ways a stormtrooper never could. And every piece has a purpose. The pauldron on the shoulder isn't for show, it's reinforced with a cortosis weave to absorb and dissipate the energy of a lightsaber blow you might not fully block. It won't stop a direct cut, but it can turn a killing blow into a deep, painful gash. The gauntlets are wired with microsensors that can read biometrics, atmospheric composition, and even trace levels of midi-chlorians in the air. That's right, the armor helps you hunt. You walk into a cantina where a Jedi was rumored to be, you get a faint reading on your gauntlet, and the hunt is on. It's like having a bloodhound built into your sleeve. The boots are magnetized, standard for shipboard operations, but the soles are also layered with a sound-dampening material. You learn to move with an unnerving silence. The helmet, if you choose to wear one, and most do to hide their faces to become the symbol rather than the person, is a marvel of technology. The HUD gives you tactical readouts, enemy tracking, and a comms link. But the most important feature is the multispectral vision. You can switch from thermal to low light to energy signature detection with a twitch of an eye muscle. A Jedi hiding in a dark alley might as well be standing in broad daylight. You see the heat of their body, the energy signature of their still beating heart. Then there's the comms unit. It's a direct, encrypted link to the Fortress on Nur, to other Inquisitors, and, terrifyingly, to Lord Vader's personal comm channel. You don't use that one, nobody uses that one unless they are summoned. The mere sight of that frequency indicator flashing on your display is enough to make your blood run cold. You could be in the middle of a winning duel, and that flash would be enough to break your concentration, to fill you with a dread that is far more paralyzing than any Jedi mind trick. But the most insidious piece of tech is the one you never see. Some fans believe Inquisitors have passive tracking beacons surgically implanted, hidden in a bone or thick muscle. The Empire could activate it if you go rogue, and then you're visible on every map. It's tiny, undetectable without a deep tissue scan. It has a passive transmitter. That means it doesn't broadcast your location constantly. That would be too easy to find and jam. No, it sits dormant, but if you go rogue, if you fail to report in, if Vader decides you're a liability, the Fortress can send an activation signal. Suddenly, you're a blinking dot on every Imperial map. The Empire always knows where you are. Finally, you have your personal databank. This is a small armoured datapad that's slave to your biometrics. It doesn't just contain star charts and mission briefings. It's the compiled knowledge of the Inquisitorius, a digital ghost of the Jedi Order. It has files on every known Jedi who survived Order 66, their names, their known skills, their last known locations. It has schematics of every Jedi temple and outpost from the Old Republic. It has anthropological data on Force-worshipping cults across the galaxy. Using this thing is a strange, hollowing experience. You're scrolling through hollows of Jedi Masters you might have known. You're studying the architecture of a temple you might have visited as a youngling. You're using the memories of a dead religion to hunt its last survivors. It turns your past into a weapon. You're literally hunting ghosts with the ghosts of your own life. The databank even has training modules, hollow recordings of Jedi combat forms, which you are required to study so you can learn to counter them. So you find yourself, in your quarters, watching the graceful, precise Form 3 of Soresu, practiced by a Jedi Master who has been dead for years, so you can learn how to break its defense. It's a perversion. It feels like digging up a grave to steal the bones, and it's all connected. The saber spin teaches you aggression. The ship's limits teach you obedience. The armor's sensors teach you to see the galaxy as a hunting ground. The beacon teaches you that you are property. The databank teaches you to despise what you once were. Your day in the Inquisitor Fortress starts with a sharp, almost violent boop through the comm unit embedded in the walls of your quarters. It's a sound designed to trigger a fight or flight response. At the same instant, the Lumisource panels on your ceiling snap on at full sterile white brightness. There's no warm-up. It's like being physically assaulted by light. They're calibrated to mimic the spectrum of a mid-rim star, all to keep your circadian rhythm perfectly in sync with the Imperial standard clock. No room for jet lag in the Inquisitorius. And your room? Let's talk about your room. It's a cell, let's not dress it up. A sleeping platform, hard and unyielding, with a single, thin sheet. A small sonic refresher unit. Water is a precious resource this deep, so you get sand blasted, clean by particles and sound waves. That's it. No personal effects, hollows, or datacrons of poetry. No mementos from a homeworld you'll never see again. The only thing that personalizes it is you, and they're doing their best to sandblast you away too. Your home is a monk's cell, if the monk's order was dedicated to murder and the crushing of hope. The first official order of the day is the first of many status checks. You pull on a standard issue, black training suit, and report to the medical bay. It's a long, cold white room that smells of antiseptic and ozone. This isn't a checkup, not in the caring sense. It's an audit, a quality control inspection. You're a piece of machinery and they're running diagnostics. You stand on a designated spot and a series of scanners pass over you. They're not measuring your heart rate or blood pressure. They're taking a deep tissue midi-chlorian count, mapping your neural activity for deviant thought patterns, and analysing your endocrine levels for stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. They're looking for fluctuations. A spike in your midi-chlorians might mean you're slipping back into Jedi meditation patterns, seeking peace instead of power. A dip might mean you're not pushing yourself, that you're growing complacent. They're looking for any sign of the person you used to be. After the scan, a medtech, just a regular human in a lab coat, always looking bored, never making eye contact, comes over and pricks your arm with a needle to draw a blood sample. You stand there, a being who can sense the emotions of a planet, who can deflect blaster bolts without looking, while this non-force sensitive human jots numbers on a datapad and mutters, "Cortisol levels are elevated." After you've been duly quantified, it's time for the first training session of the day, physical conditioning. Now you're already at the peak of humanoid physical potential. It's endurance, it's pain tolerance, and it's breaking the body's instinct to preserve itself. You'll be put through complex, punishing calisthenics, or you'll spar with heavily armoured Mark IV training droids, dumb but strong and relentless. Or you'll be running a brutal obstacle course with moving parts and energy fields that deliver a sharp, stinging shock if you're too slow. The goal is to push you to the absolute brink of muscle failure, to make every breath a searing agony in your lungs, to make your mind scream for it to stop. And just as you're about to break, the instructor, often a senior Inquisitor like the Seventh Sister, who had a voice like silk and a smile like a vibroblade, would stand over you, not even breathing heavily, and calmly state, "Pain is a lesson. The body's limits are a lie told by a weak mind. Your flesh is a suggestion. Your will is the command. Push through." And you do, you always do, because the alternative is to fail. And failure here isn't a bad grade, it's a mark on your permanent record. It's a demerit. It's the first step toward being deemed non-viable. And you know what happens to non-viable assets. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a utilitarian affair. The food is nutritionally perfect, synthesized paste and protein cubes, designed for maximum metabolic and muscular efficiency. It has all the flavor and texture of wet cardboard. You'd kill for a piece of real fruit, for the greasy, salty taste of street food from a Coruscant vendor. But that's a memory. This paste is your reality. There's no conversation. Inquisitors don't make small talk. We sit, we eat, we leave. Sometimes you'll exchange a glance with another Inquisitor across the room. It's never friendly. It's a cold, calculating assessment. You're all predators in a cage, constantly sizing each other up, looking for the slightest sign of weakness. The mid-morning block is dedicated to academic study. This is where they perform the real surgery, the rewiring of your brain. You report to one of the archives, cold, silent rooms lined with data terminals that glow with a soft blue light. Your lessons are downloaded directly to your personal, secured datapad. And the curriculum. It's a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. It's a poison, drip-fed. You don't study Jedi history, you study the Jedi treason. You are required to read meticulously crafted, declassified reports, proving how the Jedi Council planned to overthrow the Senate and install a theocratic dictatorship. You analyze tactical holovids of the Clone Wars, with a narrator coldly pointing out strategic errors by Jedi generals that needlessly cost the lives of thousands of loyal clone troopers. "Observe Master Tian's hesitation here," the voice would say. A moment of Jedi pacifism that allowed the separatist droid battalion to flank and eliminate the 212th Attack Battalion. You watch the clones, men you might have fought alongside, get vaporized, and the narrative pins their deaths squarely on the Jedi's weakness. It's all half-truths, edited footage, and outright lies, presented with cold, unassailable Imperial logic. And the worst part? You find yourself starting to believe it. A simmering, righteous anger builds in your gut. Were they really that arrogant? That detached? Did their code really make them unfit to lead? Did they let my friends die? Then you flip to the next module, Sith philosophy, but they never ever call it that. In the database, it's filed under Applied Force Theory, or the Imperial Doctrine of Personal Power. They teach you that passion is strength, that emotion is a fuel to be harnessed, that the pursuit of power is the most natural and honest state of being for a Force sensitive. They take your own anger, your own pain from Order 66, your survivor's guilt, and they don't just validate it, they sanctify it. They tell you, you are right to be angry. The Jedi failed you. They made you weak by denying your true nature. We are not suppressing your pain. We are giving it a purpose. We are making you strong. It's insidious. It's a perversion of therapy. They are actively reprogramming your trauma, turning your greatest wounds into the foundation of your new identity. After a similarly joyless lunch, more paced, maybe a different color this time, it's time for lightsaber drills. This is different from the raw physicality of the morning. This is about precision, control, and brutal efficiency. You're in the main training salle, a cavernous space, several levels high. You practice against remote droids that fire stun bolts in increasingly complex and unpredictable patterns. You run through complex aggressive katas designed for the spinning blade, learning to use its momentum rather than fight it, and you spar with other Inquisitors. These sparring sessions are the closest thing you get to real social interaction, and they are utterly brutal. There's no first to 3 points. You fight until one of you is disarmed, injured, or the overseeing instructor, often the Grand Inquisitor himself, watching from a balcony with a critical eye, calls it. The unspoken rules here are more complex than the combat forms. You must fight to win, but you must also know your place in the hierarchy. You can beat the fifth brother, sure, but you'd better make it look like a hard-fought, narrow victory. You must show just enough weakness to not be a threat, and just enough strength to not be a liability. To openly outshine a superior is not ambition, it is a challenge, and challenges are dealt with permanently. Every duel is a political statement, a careful dance of violence and submission. Late afternoon is for propaganda briefings. You're summoned to a small amphitheatre-style auditorium. You see glossy, triumphant reports of new Imperial, 2-class Star Destroyers rolling out of the shipyards at Kuat, their immense shadows falling over grateful, cheering citizens. You see hollows of pacified worlds, now orderly and clean, their markets bustling under the watchful eye of stormtroopers. You hear speeches from regional governors praising the stability and security the Empire has brought. The message is hammered home, day after day. You are a part of this. You are a guardian of this new order. The Jedi were the chaos that led to war. We are the peace that has ended it. You are on the right side of history. You sit there in the dark, watching the gleaming white armor and the smiling, placid faces, and for a fleeting moment, you can almost believe it. It's a balm on the constant simmering rage inside you. It offers a grand, noble purpose that transcends your own personal pain and anger. It's a seductive lie, and you are a willing listener. Then comes the final, most psychologically draining part of the day. Mission log and report writing. You return to the silence of your quarters and sit at your terminal. Here, you have to file a detailed daily report on your own progress. You must input your training scores, your performance metrics. But the worst part is the psychological self-assessment. You are required to document any unorthodox thoughts, moments of hesitation, or lingering attachments you may have experienced. Did you feel a flicker of pity for the training droid? Did you recall the face of a Jedi Master with something other than hatred? Report it. It's a forced confession, a daily ritual of self-betrayal. You are quantifying your own indoctrination, proving to them that you are a good little weapon. And you have to review mission logs. Not just your own, but archives of other Inquisitors' hunts. Successes and, with a chilling focus, failures. You are made to watch grainy helmet cam, hollow recordings of Inquisitors being outmaneuvered and cut down by Jedi. You listen to the final panicked sensor logs of a TIE Advanced V1 being torn apart by a force push. You read the last, desperate thoughts of a colleague who underestimated their prey. It's a constant, grim reminder of the stakes. This isn't a game or a path to power. This is a war of extermination, and you are on the front line. Your predecessors are not heroes to be emulated. They are case studies in what happens when you are not perfect. Dinner is a repeat of breakfast. Silence. Synthetic food. The clatter of utensils. The weight of 100 silent assessments. Your evenings are technically your own, but there's nothing to do. No rec rooms, cantinas, common areas for socializing. The Fortress offers no distractions from yourself. Some Inquisitors obsessively maintain their gear, disassembling and cleaning their lightsaber for the third time that day, finding a strange, meditative solace in the machinery. Others retreat into further, unsanctioned physical training, pounding away at heavy bags in a private gym, trying to exhaust their bodies into silence. Most, however, just sit in their quarters, in the silence. And that's the hardest part. The real torture of the Fortress isn't the high gravity or the stun bolts, it's the silence. It gives you nowhere to hide from yourself. In that quiet, your mind wanders. You remember your old life, the warm light of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, the smell of the archives, the laughter of friends in the mess hall. Real laughter, not this cold silence. You remember the faces of the Jedi you've hunted, not as enemies, but as people. The confusion in a Padawan's eyes, the resigned sorrow of a master who recognizes what you've become. The fear. This is when the doubt creeps in, a cold tendril wrapping around your heart. This is when you have to actively, forcefully crush it. You stoke the anger. You replay the propaganda. You remember the truth of the Jedi treason. You have to, because if you don't, if you let the silence and the memories win, you are lost. The Fortress itself will sense your weakening resolve. The silence will swallow you whole. And then, with a final, merciful lack of ceremony, the light in your quarters snaps off, plunging you into an absolute perfect darkness. The kind of darkness you only find at the bottom of an ocean. The only sound is the faint, almost subaudible hum of the Fortress's life support, the lungs of your metal tomb, and the imagined crushing pressure of millions of tons of black water above you. You lie there on your hard platform, and the Fortress does its final, most important work of the day. It makes you lonely, it makes you angry, it makes you desperate. Desperate for a mission, for an alert, for any escape from the crushing monotony and the haunting silence of your own mind. You end up praying for the alert, for the chance to hunt, to fight, to possibly even die. Because the hunt, for all its terror and violence, is the only time the silence stops. It's the only time you feel the wind on your face, see the light of a star, feel the adrenaline that makes you feel even remotely alive. The Fortress is just where you go to be reminded that you're not a person. You're a tool in a box, waiting on a shelf, slowly gathering dust, praying for the chance to be used before you rust away into nothing. So the alert finally comes. Maybe you're in the middle of the high-grav training, or you're staring at a wall of propaganda on your datapad, or you're just lying in the dark trying not to think. It doesn't matter. That sharp Priority 1 chime from your comm unit is the most beautiful and terrifying sound in the galaxy. It's the sound of purpose. You open the file. The first thing you see is the target's designation. Not a name, they rarely have names. It's Asset Gamma 7 or Potential Zeta 9er. It's a way of stripping their humanity away before you've even seen their face. Then you get the data, and this is where you see the true, terrifying reach of the Empire. The hunt is a machine, and you're just the final, sharpened blade at the end of it. The intel can come from anywhere. The ISB, Imperial Security Bureau, they're the ears of the Empire. They're the ones who sift through 1 trillion daily comms, traffic logs, and financial transactions. They're looking for anomalies, a sudden unexplained power surge on a backwater planet that matches the energy signature of a lightsaber ignition. Sometimes it's from a local governor. Some moth on the outer rim gets spooked. Maybe there was an incident at a spaceport. A customs officer got thrown across a room by an unseen force. The moth doesn't have the resources or the stomach to deal with a Jedi, so he kicks the problem upstairs, right to us. These are the messy ones. Politically messy. The moth is usually covering his own backside, and the data is often incomplete, filtered through his own fear and incompetence. But the best intel the purest, comes from our own network. The Inquisitorius has its own eyes. We have Purge troopers, stormtroopers, but sharper, deadlier, trained specifically to support us. They're deployed to likely worlds, poking around old Jedi outposts, asking the right questions in the right seedy spaceports. And then there are the other sources, the ones we don't talk about. Bounty hunters, smugglers, crime lords. The Empire is happy to do business with scum if that scum can lead them to a Jedi. It's a funny thing, hunting the galaxy's last bastions of light by making deals in the dark. So you've got the file, you've got the planet, the last known coordinates, the suspected identity if they're a known survivor. Now the real work begins. This is where you stop being a soldier and start being a predator. First you hit the archives, you cross-reference the location. Is it near an old Jedi temple? A known Force nexus? A planet strong in the living Force? Like Dathomir or Felucia? A Jedi on the run is scared, and scared creatures run to familiar places, to places that feel strong in the Force. They're like wounded animals returning to their den. We have maps of those dens. Then you study the profile. If it's a known Jedi, you pull their old temple records. What was their specialization? A Jedi Guardian will be more direct, more likely to stand and fight. A Jedi Consular might try to talk, to reason, to hide using the Force. A Shadow is trouble. They're used to operating in the dark, just like us. You learn their lightsaber form from the archives. Soresu users are turtles, they'll bunker down. Ataru users are acrobats. They'll use the environment. You're not just learning to fight them, you're learning to think like them, to anticipate their panic. Then you go to your ship. The TIE Advanced V1 is prepped and waiting in the launch bay. This is the part they can't teach, the Force tracking. You hold the datapad with the target's information, you look at their hologram, if you have one, and you open yourself to the Force. But not to the light. You reach out with your fear, your anger, your pain. You cast a net made of darkness into the cosmic ocean, and you're looking for a ripple. A tiny, bright pinprick of light that feels out of place. A feeling of serenity in a galaxy of fear. A flicker of hope in the overwhelming despair. It's like trying to hear a single, pure note in the middle of a screaming, industrial noise. It's faint, it's elusive. But when you find it, it's like a hook in your mind. A cold, clear certainty. There, they are there. Now, you're on the ground. This is where the protocol gets intimate. You're not a soldier leading a charge, you're a hunter tracking prey. You might have a squad of Purge troopers with you, but you often send them on a wide perimeter. Their job is to contain, to create noise and chaos, to funnel the target towards you. You are the spearhead. You walk through the streets of a city or the paths of a forest, and you're using everything. The sensors in your gauntlets, scanning for the faint residual energy a Force user leaves in their wake. You're reading the people. Fear is a scent. You walk into a cantina and you can feel the sudden tension, the quickened heartbeats. People know when death has walked in. They can't explain it, but they feel it. You look for the one person who isn't just scared, but who is trying to hide their fear. That's your target. Sometimes you find their hiding place first. A small apartment, a cave. You go in alone. You don't touch anything. You just stand there. You close your eyes and you feel the echoes. The desperation they felt here. The memories they clung to. The fear that kept them awake at night. You absorb it. It makes you stronger. It fuels the dark side. You're not just hunting their body, you're consuming their spirit. The final confrontation is almost an afterthought. It's the logical conclusion of the process. They run, of course. They always run. Or they try to hide. But you can feel them. Their light is a beacon in your dark senses. When you finally corner them, when you ignite your spinning, screaming red blade, that's when you see it in their eyes. They see what you are, and they see what they could become. They see the future the Empire has planned for the Force. The fight itself, it's a formality. You have the advantage. You're well-fed, well-rested, armed with a weapon designed for terror. They're hungry, scared, fighting with a relic. Your job isn't just to kill them, your job is to break them. To show them that their hope, their light, their connection to the Force is worthless. You feed on their despair, and when it's over, there's no feeling of triumph. There's just quiet. The light you were tracking is gone. You contact your Purge troopers for cleanup. You take a trophy, if one is required, their lightsaber, a personal effect, for confirmation. Then you walk back to your ship alone. The hunt is over. the tool is returning to its box. And as the stars stretch into the blue tunnel of hyperspace, you have nothing to do but sit and wait for the next alert and try not to think about the light you just put out. Alright, so let's talk about the man. I mean, a 6'7", all-black, mechanized breathing nightmare of a man, Darth Vader. You've been through the grind, you've survived the Purge, you've been twisted and broken and rebuilt at Fortress Inquisitorius. You've got your spinny lightsaber and a fancy title like 7th Sister or 5th Brother. You're a hunter. You're the thing that Jedi nightmares are made of. You walk into a room on some mid-rim world and stormtroopers snap to attention so fast you think their plastoid armor might crack. Imperial officers get quiet and nervous, their eyes darting around, trying not to look you in the eye. And in that moment, you might feel a flicker of something. Pride, maybe even a little bit of that dark side thrill. You've earned this. You've bled for it. And then he walks in, and you remember, in a cold, sudden rush that starts at the base of your spine and shoots right up into your brain, that you are not at the top of this food chain. You're somewhere in the middle. And the thing at the top, well, let's just say you're not even on the same planet as him. He's the apex predator, and you're just another creature scurrying around in the undergrowth, hoping not to be noticed. The relationship every Inquisitor has with Vader is simple. It's fear. Pure, undiluted, get a headache from how thick it is, in the air fear. But it's a weird, complex kind of fear. It's not like the simple fear of a monster in a cave. It's more sophisticated, more insidious. It's the fear a mouse has for the owl, a deep, instinctual, professional understanding that your entire existence is contingent on his momentary lack of interest in crushing your windpipe. Think of the Inquisitorius not as a military branch, but as a pack of semi-wild dogs that the Empire has caught, trained, and let loose. You're useful. You can hunt, you can corner prey, you have teeth. But Vader isn't the pack leader, he's the owner. And he has a very, very short leash and a well-documented history of putting down animals that misbehave or that simply fail to meet expectations. The kennel is always full. There are always more desperate, force-sensitive souls to break and remake. Now, you don't see him every day. Thank the stars for that small mercy. Most of your time is spent out on missions, tracking Jedi across the galaxy, or down in the dripping, echoing training halls of the Fortress. He's a distant, looming presence, a name whispered in after-action reports, a feeling you sometimes get when a comms channel from Coruscant goes silent for no reason, and you just know he's on the other end of the line, listening. But every once in a while, a mission profile gets a sudden, alarming upgrade. The text on the datapad shifts from green to a harsh, urgent crimson. The objective stays the same, but the personnel list gets one new, terrifying addition, always at the top, in a font that seems to suck the light from the screen. Lord Vader. The first time you're assigned to accompany him, it's not an honor. Let's be crystal clear about that. It's a corporate audit. It's your terrifying, all-powerful boss from head office deciding to ride along with you on your sales call to a potentially hostile client. And you know that if you mess up this PowerPoint presentation, the consequences are a bit more severe than getting fired. The consequences involve a lot of choking sounds and the sight of your own boots dangling a foot off the ground. The preparation is insane. It's borderline ritualistic. You check your armor a dozen times, buffing out any scuff marks. You practice igniting your blade for an hour, making sure the spin mechanism is smooth and doesn't make that weird grinding noise it sometimes does after a hard impact. You rehearse your reports in your head, your voice a low murmur in your quarters. You go over the tactical maps until the lines are burned into the back of your eyelids. You are, for all intents and purposes, a nervous wreck pretending to be a deadly instrument of the dark side. Now, watching him work, it's a masterclass in terror and efficiency. It's where you truly learn the difference between what you are and what he is. You, as an Inquisitor, you hunt. It's a process. There are steps. You get a tip from the ISB, you analyze hyperspace routes, you follow force echoes, you track, you corner, you engage. There's a dance to it. You might trade a few blows, exchange some witty banter, try to break their spirit before you break their body. There's a perverse satisfaction in the chase itself. Vader doesn't hunt, he collects, he repossesses. He is the Empire's final bill come due. You remember one time you were on some backwater planet, I think it was Targan, hunting a former Jedi archivist who'd been hiding out as a librarian for the past decade. Not exactly a frontline warrior. This guy's biggest combat feat in recent years was probably shushing a noisy patron. You had him cornered in the ancient data stacks, a labyrinth of crumbling shelves and dusty data tapes. Your job, according to the original plan, was to flush him out into the main hall, where a squad of Purge troopers could stun him. You were ready for a little cat and mouse game, your blade spinning, feeling pretty damn good about yourself. This was a clean, easy capture. Then Vader just walked through the wall. Okay, he didn't literally walk through it, but it felt like he did. He just strode forward, not even breaking his step, and a whole section of the permacrete wall, 3 meters thick, just exploded inward. Dust and debris just fell apart in a perfect Vader-shaped doorway. It was just an afterthought, like swatting a fly. The librarian, this poor old Duros man, fired a single, panicked blaster bolt at him. Vader caught the bolt in his hand. I'm not kidding. He didn't deflect it with his lightsaber. He just opened his palm, and the red energy sizzled and died against his glove. He didn't even slow down. He didn't say a word. He just reached out with his hand, and the old man lifted into the air, choking, his feet kicking uselessly. His lightsaber, still on his belt, a simple green blade he probably hadn't ignited in years, flew into Vader's other hand. Vader looked at it for a second, turning it over, like he was inspecting a piece of fruit for bruises, then clipped it to his own belt. Then he turned around and walked back to the shuttle, the librarian still floating behind him, unconscious. The whole thing, from wall explosion to turnaround, took about 15 seconds. You were just standing there. The Purge troopers were just glancing at each other, then at you, completely unsure of what their purpose was now. That's the difference. You are a tool. He is a natural disaster. You follow a procedure. He rewrites the laws of physics to suit his mood. And this leads to the single most important, unspoken rule of being an Inquisitor. The one rule that, if you break it, guarantees you a one-way ticket to being a temporary decoration on the wall of his meditation chamber. It's not written down in any manual. It's learned through horrified whispers and sudden empty seats in the mess hall. Never outshine the master. He demands competence. Failure is punished, often fatally. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not offer an opinion unless it is directly solicited. You do not land the killing blow on a Jedi if he is in the room. You do not solve the tactical puzzle before he does. You do not, under any circumstances, make him look like he needs your help. You are a set of eyes, a blade to direct, a hound to point at a scent. That's it. Your job is to make his job easier, while simultaneously making it look like he never needed you in the first place. It's a hell of a balancing act. So what's it truly like to serve him? It's a constant low-grade psychic hum of dread, a background noise in your life that's always there, like the buzzing of a faulty light panel. It's punctuated by moments of sheer, pants-wetting terror when you're in his direct presence. It's a life of walking on eggshells that are also potentially explosive. But here's the really twisted part. It's also admiration, a dark, ugly, but undeniable sliver of admiration. You can't help but look at that raw, unstoppable power and feel a pull. You think, that's what the dark side can really do. It's intoxicating. It makes you want to be stronger, to dig deeper into your own hatred, to maybe, one day, have a fraction of that power. It's the same feeling that probably made a lot of us fall in the first place, the promise of strength without limits. He is the walking, talking, breathing embodiment of that promise. But it's also a constant grinding awareness of your own mortality. Your life expectancy in his presence is directly proportional to your usefulness in that exact moment. And the moment you cease to be useful, or the moment you become a nuisance, or the moment you simply bore him, you're gone. There's no pension plan for retired Inquisitors. There's only a tally of those who are still active and those who have been retired permanently. All right, the Inquisitors are the field agents. We're the ones who go out into the grimy, lived-in galaxy and bag the quarry. But once we bring a Jedi, or any Force-sensitive, back alive, they don't always go straight to interrogation cell or a final fiery lightsaber duel. Sometimes, the prize gets handed over to the guys in the pristine white coats, the Imperial Science Corps. And let me tell you, as utterly pants-wetting as it is to face a Sith Lord, there's a different, deeper kind of dread that comes from the quiet, antiseptic hum of a medical bay and a scientist who looks at you not as a person or even a rival, but as a fascinating set of data points. You're not a threat to them. You're a resource, a specimen. Our jobs would often overlap with theirs. These were officially called joint operations, which sounds all very professional and cooperative, like we're a well-oiled machine. In reality, it usually meant we were the glorified muscle, the security detail for the nerds. We'd be sent to secure a location, maybe an old Jedi outpost, rumoured to have a hidden archive, or a Sith tomb on a forgotten moon that was giving off some seriously weird energy readings. And then we'd have to stand around trying to look menacing, while a bunch of nervous scientists, with data pads and sensor wands, scurried around like startled insects, collecting artifacts, scraping moss off walls, and taking atmospheric samples. It was boring, tedious work, until it very suddenly, violently, wasn't. Because the things the Jedi left behind, they weren't always friendly. The main goal of all this science was deceptively simple. From the Empire's perspective, understand the Force, quantify it, control it, and if possible, replicate it. Palpatine and Vader didn't only want to exterminate the Jedi, they wanted to own the very thing that made them special. They wanted to strip the mystery and the faith out of it, to demystify it completely, and turn it into just another technology, another piece of hardware, another weapon they could, in theory, mass produce. They wanted an army of Force users who weren't burdened by philosophy or morality, who would just follow orders. We, the Inquisitors, were the messy, emotional, unreliable prototype. They wanted the clean, factory-line model. So, what did that look like on the ground? Let's start with the most infamous, most ambitious, and most catastrophic of their projects. The cloning experiments. Everyone's heard the rumours about the Kaminoans and their clone army, right? The most perfect military force ever conceived. Well, the Empire took that core idea and ran with it in the darkest, most hubristic direction possible. They weren't trying to clone skilled soldiers anymore. They were trying to clone Force sensitives. The thought process in some lab on Coruscant was if you could get a viable genetic template from a powerful Jedi Master, you could create an entire army of loyal, Force-wielding super soldiers. No more relying on emotionally unstable, fallen Jedi like us, with our messy pasts and personal vendettas. They'd get a clean, obedient, psychologically stable, and limitless supply of dark side enforcers. It was a total, unmitigated, and horrifying failure. The clones they produced, they were wrong. On a fundamental level, they'd deteriorate rapidly, both physically and mentally. Their bodies would age at a wildly accelerated rate, a decade in a standard week, their skin wrinkling and their hair turning white before the scientists' eyes. Or their cells would just fall apart like paper dissolving in water, a condition the medics called accelerated cellular decay. They were living, breathing time bombs, and their connection to the Force, it was a twisted, painful, chaotic thing. It wasn't a river they could draw from, it was a storm they were trapped inside. This unstable connection would almost always drive them insane. The project wasn't a laboratory, it was a graveyard of monstrous, suffering creatures. It turns out you can't photocopy a soul. You can't replicate a lifetime of training and spiritual connection in a vat. The Empire, in its arrogance, learned that the hard way, over mountains of dead, failed experiments. Then there was the more direct, more brutal approach, midi-chlorian extraction. The Imperial scientists, many of whom had never felt the Force even once, had this rigid, materialistic theory that the Force was a purely biological phenomenon, tied directly and exclusively to these microscopic life forms in your bloodstream. So, their logical cold conclusion was if we can get a high enough concentration of them out of a powerful Jedi, maybe we can inject them into a non-Force sensitive volunteer, like a stormtrooper or an officer. Or maybe we can concentrate them into some kind of super serum, an elixir that could grant power. This obsession with biology also ties directly into the genetic manipulation programs. The logic was, if you can't transfer the Force through transfusion, maybe you can engineer it from the ground up. They take endless tissue samples from every captured Jedi and Force-sensitive child, running endless genetic sequencing, trying to find the elusive Force sensitivity gene. They experimented on the young ones a lot here, the kids we'd bring in from our hunts who showed potential. The procedures were invasive. They'd try to splice DNA from powerful subjects into theirs, use viral vectors to trigger specific mutations, all in a desperate attempt to create a stronger, more stable, and most importantly, more controllable connection to the Force. The survival rate for these child subjects was astronomically low. Most ended up as more failed statistics in the Empire's endless, bloody quest for total dominion. They weren't children to the science core, they were prototypes. And when a prototype fails, you discard it and start over. And our role in all this, as Inquisitors, we were the delivery system, the galactic bloodhounds who fetched the raw materials. But sometimes we'd even be the test subjects ourselves. Alright, let's settle in and talk about the rebellion. The first time you, as an Inquisitor, have to confront the fact that hunting Jedi is a clean, precise business, but dealing with a bunch of angry, ordinary people who've decided they've had enough, that is a chaotic, frustrating, and frankly, beneath you kind of problem. See, our mandate, our reason for breathing, was crystal clear. We were a specialist unit, the galaxy's premier exterminators, for a very specific, Force-sensitive pest. The Jedi were our entire universe. So when these little pockets of discontent started flaring up, a noisy protest on Corellia over trade routes, a hijacked Imperial transport in the Anuit sector, some backbench senator in the Imperial Senate making a snippy speech about freedom, our first instinctive reaction was usually a dismissive shrug. It was background noise, static on the comm channel. It was, officially, and in our hearts, someone else's problem. Think of it like this. You're a master electrician, the absolute best in the sector, called in to fix a critical, dangerous power surge that could black out an entire capital city. You've got your diagnostic scopes, your hyperspanners, your elbow deep in the main reactor conduit, focusing on a problem that requires all your skill and concentration. And while you're in that zone, some panicked maintenance droid rolls up and squeals, "Hey, the faucet in the third floor fresher is dripping." You're not going to drop your calibrated million-credit tools to go and tighten a simple valve. You'd tell them to call a plumber and get back to your real work. For us, the Imperial Army, the Stormtrooper Corps, and the ISB, they were the plumbers. Let them handle the leaky faucets and the clogged drains of galactic insurrection. Our job was to prevent the whole grid from melting down. This mindset was baked into our daily routine. Our mission briefing packets would download to our datapads each cycle, and you'd flip through them with a specific, targeted focus. Attack on an Imperial garrison on Dantooine. You'd look a little closer, but if the description was just well-coordinated small arms fire and explosives, you'd lose interest. You were scanning for that one magic keyword, the only thing that really put a fire in your belly and made the dark side sit up and take notice: Jedi. If that word wasn't in the file, the entire packet got stamped with a digital marker. Low priority. You'd archive it and move on with your day, maybe heading down to the training halls to spar. We had real hunting to do. We were tracking ghosts, and you can't be distracted by the chatter of the living. The difference between Jedi hunting and rebellion suppression for us was the difference between hunting a single, magnificent Krayt dragon and dealing with a swarming, mindless cloud of Nuna wasps. One is a focused, incredibly dangerous contest of wills, power, and skill. You study the dragon's migrations, you learn its hunting grounds, you find its lair, and you face it in a battle that is pure, terrifying, and perversely beautiful. There's a rhythm to it, a dark, violent dance. The other is just chaotic, annoying, and undignified. The wasps are everywhere. They sting you in a dozen places at once for no reason. There's no pattern or honor to it, and there's absolutely no glory in swatting them. It's just a noisy, painful nuisance. A Jedi is a worthy adversary. A rebel with a blaster is just a target. A Jedi is a singular, high-value target. You can sense their presence in the Force. A bright, annoying beacon you can zero in on. You can predict their moves, their philosophy, their need to protect others. There's a strange, twisted purity to that conflict. But a rebel cell, they're just people. Angry, desperate, courageous, stupid, unpredictable people. They don't fight with the refined elegance of the Force. They fight with jury-rigged thermal detonators, hit-and-run speeder bike attacks, smuggled blasters, and poorly printed propaganda flyers. There's no honor in it, no grand duel of fates, just messy, civilian-grade violence that was, we firmly believed, beneath our pay grade and our purpose. Alright, let's cut to the chase. How strong were we really? Could an Inquisitor go toe-to-toe with, let's say, Mace Windu? Could we have taken Dooku in a fair fight? The short, brutally honest answer is no, not even close. And that was the entire point. See, people get this wrong all the time. They think you are Sith. But we weren't Sith. A Sith is a master of the dark side. An Inquisitor is a user of the dark side. There's a galaxy of difference between the two. Think of it like this. A Jedi Master is a world-renowned surgeon. They have decades of training, a profound understanding of the body, and they can perform miracles with a scalpel. A Sith Lord is a master of biological warfare. They understand life and death on a fundamental level and can weaponize it. An Inquisitor? We're the field medic with a bone saw and a bottle of whiskey. So let's put us on the power scale against a Jedi Padawan or a Knight. We were a nightmare. We were absolutely terrifyingly effective. Most Jedi we hunted were survivors of Order 66. They were traumatized, isolated, on the run. They hadn't had proper training in years. They were trying to hide, to be peaceful, to cling to a code that preached non-aggression. We were the opposite. We were well-fed, well-equipped, and our entire existence was built around one thing: killing Jedi. Our fighting style, that spinning, aggressive, overwhelming saber technique, was designed specifically to shatter traditional Jedi forms. Against a Padawan, or even most Knights, it was like throwing a feral AKK dog into a meditation garden. We relied on brute force, terror, and sheer, unrelenting aggression. We won most of our fights because we fought dirty, and we fought to kill, not to enlighten. Against a Jedi Master, this is where the cracks showed. A true Jedi Master, someone like Obi-Wan Kenobi in his prime, or a council member, was a different beast. They had a depth of connection to the Force that we simply couldn't match. Our power was a shallow well we drew from in frantic, angry gulps. Theirs was a deep, flowing river. A master wouldn't be intimidated by the spinning saber. They'd see the patterns, the weaknesses. The spinning blade creates openings. It's a commitment to offense, with less defense. A master of Soresu, like Kenobi, could just stand there and let us exhaust ourselves, deflecting everything we threw at them until we made a mistake. A master of a Taru or Gem, so would have the raw power and agility to break our rhythm and strike at the core. We were bullies, and a Jedi Master doesn't get bullied. Against a Sith Lord? Don't make me laugh. It wouldn't be a fight. It would be an execution. Let's take Darth Vader out of the equation for a second, because that's just a whole other level of terror. Let's talk about a Sith like Dooku or Maul. A Sith Lord's connection to the dark side is profound, philosophical, and controlled. Ours was a shallow, emotional puddle. They could summon Force lightning, a display of pure, focused, dark side power that requires immense control and depth. We couldn't do that. We could push, pull, choke maybe, but it was raw and unfocused. Our telekinesis was like using a sledgehammer. Theirs was like using a scalpel. A Sith Lord's lightsaber technique is a refined, deadly art form, often one they created themselves. Ours was a corporate-mandated, mass-produced fighting style handed down from a manual. We were taught to be dangerous. They were born to be lethal. The Grand Inquisitor was probably the strongest of us, but even he was defeated by a Padawan. An exceptionally gifted one, yes, but still a Padawan. A Sith Lord would have dismantled that same Padawan without breaking a sweat. So what was our power source? It wasn't the deep cosmic well of the dark side that the Sith tap into. It was something cheaper, more readily available. Our pain, our fear, our self-loathing. Every time we ignited our blades, we were channeling the trauma of Order 66, the humiliation of our conditioning, the constant gnawing terror of Vader. It was a toxic, unsustainable fuel. It made us powerful in short, violent bursts, but it had no depth. It had no future. It's why we never progressed, why we never achieved true Sith power. We were kept on a leash, fed just enough darkness to be effective hunters, but never enough to become rivals. We were the attack dogs of the dark side, vicious, loyal, and dangerous to anyone who wasn't holding the leash. But you don't send an attack dog to fight a wolf, and you never ever send it to fight the wolf's master. Now, I mentioned Purge troopers before, but now, let's actually talk about those guys. Inquisitor dogs, the Empire's black-clad muscle, the poor souls who got stuck cleaning up the mess every time an Inquisitor decided to play Hunt the Jedi. You know, the kind of people who probably had survive next to a Sith as a daily objective, which, to be honest, is about as good as writing, try not to get hit by lightning during a thunderstorm. So who were they really? Well, Purge troopers were basically the next generation of clone troopers, at least at first. When Order 66 hit, the clones did their job a little too well. The Jedi were almost wiped out, but the Empire realized there were still a few running around. Palpatine, being the paranoid genius he was, decided to create a specialized branch of troops whose only job was to mop up the leftovers. That's where the Purge troopers came in, the Inquisitors' personal hunting dogs. Loyal, silent, and fully aware that the people they served could slice them in half for sneezing too loud. At first, most of them were clones, leftovers from the 501st, the 212th, and a few other legions that hadn't been reassigned yet. You can actually tell by their armor in the early years. It's got that Phase 2 clone design, just darker and meaner. Over time though, the Empire started phasing out the clones completely. Their growth acceleration made them age faster, and Palpatine didn't like soldiers who could think for themselves or remember too much. So the later Purge troopers were conscripted humans, trained under Imperial command to fight Force users, which, by the way, is a ridiculous job description. Hey, you there, normal human with a blaster, go fight the laser wizard who can throw ships. And yet somehow they did it. These guys were trained like absolute machines. Specialized combat routines, anti-force tactics, ambush operations, everything designed to overwhelm a Jedi before they could react. They fought in squads, always coordinated, always moving. You couldn't fight a Jedi one-on-one, so they didn't even try. It was all about numbers, traps and timing. If a Purge trooper team showed up on your planet, it wasn't a battle, it was a cleanup operation. Their equipment was a big part of that. You probably remember that sleek black armor, heavier than regular stormtrooper gear, reinforced to withstand glancing lightsaber hits. It didn't make them invincible, but it gave them a few precious seconds before they got carved like a roast. They carried electrostaffs, vibroblades, DC-15 rifles, and even specialized shields in some cases. Think of them as a mix between stormtroopers and riot police, but instead of riots, they were breaking up Jedi. There were actually a few different variants. You had your standard Purge troopers, of course, the frontline guys. Then you had commanders who coordinated entire operations, often under an Inquisitor's supervision. And then there were heavy units, built like walking tanks, armed with electro hammers or repeating blasters that could shake the ground. Those guys didn't move fast, but when they showed up, it usually meant someone in a cloak was about to have a very bad day. The relationship between Purge troopers and Inquisitors was complicated. On paper, they served as the Inquisitors' support units. In reality, it was a lot more like walking behind a hungry rancor and hoping it doesn't turn around. The Inquisitors didn't see them as equals, or even comrades. They were tools, extensions of their will. If a trooper failed, they didn't get a second chance. And if an Inquisitor was in a bad mood, well, let's just say some of those black-armored bodies on Nur weren't killed by Jedi. The Purge troopers knew this. They knew who they were working for, and they still did it. Why? Because in the Empire, having a purpose, any purpose, was better than being another face in a white helmet. They were elite feared, respected in their own grim way. Regular stormtroopers whispered about them. Even officers didn't mess with them. If a Purge trooper detachment arrived at your outpost, you cleared the hangar and made room. They had that presence, the kind that said, don't ask questions unless you want to end up a cautionary tale. Now, life for a Purge trooper wasn't exactly glamorous. Most of the time, they were stationed on Fortress Inquisitorius, that gloomy ocean moon of Nur. When they weren't on missions, they trained endlessly. Hand-to-hand combat drills, anti-force simulations, reflex tests. They had to be ready to move at any hour. The Inquisitors didn't do schedules. They did whims. If your commander woke up and decided she wanted to go find a disturbance, you were on that ship in 10 minutes. And speaking of ships, they usually travelled in Sentinel-class shuttles. The Inquisitors got the fancy personal craft. The Purge troopers got whatever was available. But that's fine. These guys didn't care about comfort. They cared about the mission. They were soldiers born into a machine that never stopped grinding, and the only way to survive was to keep marching. Still, there was an unspoken understanding between them and the Inquisitors. Not trust, that would be too generous, but recognition. The Inquisitors might have sneered at them, but they relied on them. You can't corner a Jedi alone. You need boots on the ground, blasters in the air, and bodies willing to take the first few hits while you do your spooky force tricks. They were the backbone of the hunt. Without them, the Inquisitors wouldn't have been nearly as effective. But here's where things get kind of sad. As the years went by and the Jedi became rarer, the Purge troopers started to fade too. No more missions meant no more purpose. Some were reassigned to stormtrooper divisions. Others probably just disappeared. And the last generation, the human recruits, they were never truly accepted anywhere. Regular Imperials thought they were freaks, brainwashed brutes who'd spent too much time staring into the abyss. And when the Inquisitorius finally fell apart, the Purge troopers went with them. The Empire had no use for soldiers trained to fight Jedi when there were none left. Maybe some ended up guarding black sites. Maybe a few got drafted into secret projects under the ISB or Imperial Science Division. But most lost to history. You won't find their names in records. The Empire didn't do names. It's weird to think about. These were some of the last living links between the clone era and the age of the Empire. They were trained like clones, commanded like stormtroopers, and feared like Sith. And yet in the end, they were forgotten like footnotes. If you ever visit Nur, what's left of it anyway, the ocean probably still hides their armor. Maybe some of them are still down there, sealed in those suits, staring through the black water. You could say they were the last generation of soldiers who understood what they were fighting. The clones had memories, context, a history with the Jedi. The Purge troopers were told stories, that the Jedi were traitors, heretics, monsters. They grew up hearing propaganda and followed orders because the galaxy didn't give them another option. That's the tragedy of it. They were never the villains in their own minds. They were just soldiers doing what they were trained to do. And if you think about it, that's the story of the whole Empire, isn't it? Millions of people doing their jobs, each one thinking they're holding the line for order and peace. The Purge troopers just had a front row seat to how far that illusion could go. You know, every empire eventually runs out of people to blame. The Inquisitorius was no exception. For a while, they were the Emperor's favourite toy. Sleek, dangerous and shiny with all that dark side menace. But like most Imperial projects, they came with an expiration date. And the moment they ran out of Jedi to hunt, their usefulness dropped faster than a stormtrooper's aim. It's kind of funny when you think about it. The Inquisitorius started as this elite order of Jedi hunters, terrifying, mysterious, whisper their name and pray you don't meet them type of group. They had the full backing of Darth Vader, which is basically like having a target painted on your back and calling it armor. At first, they were everywhere. Reports of red lightsabers flashing on backwater worlds, temples desecrated, Force-sensitive kids disappearing. The Empire looked unstoppable. But the thing about fear, it needs fuel. And once the Jedi were mostly gone, there wasn't much left to burn. By the time the galaxy started whispering about rebellions instead of Jedi fugitives, the Inquisitors found themselves a bit directionless, like a bounty hunter in retirement, still wearing the armor, but with no one left to shoot. The Emperor's attention shifted. The rebellion was growing teeth, and Sidious cared more about fleets, spies, and superweapons than about cleaning up the few monks hiding in caves somewhere. Inside the fortress on Nur, you could almost feel the silence thickening. Missions slowed down, training halls echoed empty. Some Inquisitors started turning on each other, suspicious of who might be Vader's favourite, or who was secretly planning a power grab. And honestly, they weren't wrong to worry, because if there's one thing you didn't do in the Inquisitorius, it survived for too long. The Grand Inquisitor was already long gone by then, underestimating what happens when you try to be clever around Jedi. After his death, the ranks just kept thinning. The second sister, ninth sister, fifth brother, all of them either killed on missions or by their own kind. And of course, there were rumours that some tried to flee, others disappeared into the Outer Rim. But if you've learned anything about the Empire, it's that it doesn't like loose ends. Now, the Emperor, he wasn't sentimental. He didn't keep people around because they had history. If a program stopped being useful, it was quietly archived. That's probably the best word for what happened to the Inquisitorius. And Vader, well, his patience with them ran out fast. He didn't like competition. He didn't like arrogance. And he really didn't like failure. We were his personal tool, a specific, precise surgical instrument for a very specific task. Our small-scale Jedi hunting operations, tracking a single Force signature across a sector, dueling in forgotten temples, became trivial to him, a distraction. We were like a master locksmith's favourite set of picks, perfectly crafted, But now the entire palace was besieged, and he needed a battering ram and a legion of stormtroopers. The finesse was no longer required. He'd take personal command of entire fleets, like the Death Squadron. He'd hunt down the secret rebel base at Hoth himself. Why dispatch a handful of Inquisitors to maybe, after a long and messy chase, capture one Jedi, when he could just glass the entire planet from orbit and be certain? But the real rot, the cancer that ate us from the inside out, was internal. The very structure of the Inquisitorius was a masterpiece of self-distraction. Just think about the psychology of it. You gather a bunch of the most power-hungry, hate-filled, deeply traumatized people in the galaxy. You pit them against each other in a constant, brutal competition. You teach them that failure is punishable by death, and that the only way to advance is over the corpse of a rival. What did the Empire think was going to happen? By the time Luke Skywalker showed up with his farm boy haircut and a hand-me-down lightsaber, the Inquisitors were long gone. Their story had already turned to dust. Luke even mentioned it later, how the red blades had once cut through the galaxy and then vanished. Like ghosts who realized no one was scared of them anymore. So looking back on it all now, from the other side, what was it all for? All the pain, the training on Nur that broke your body and spirit over and over, like a wave against the rocks. The ritual of bleeding your kyber crystal, feeling it scream in your mind until it submitted, a process that left a permanent scar on your own soul. The friends, the fellow Padawans, you were forced to kill just to prove your loyalty was absolute. The constant, gnawing, ever-present fear of the dark, breathing giant who was your master. You tell yourself a story to survive. You say it's for power, for a new order, for a place in the new galaxy, a seat at the table. But in the end, you were just a tool, a fancy, scary-looking, intricately crafted tool that the Empire used until the edge got dull and a newer, shinier model caught its eye, and then it was thrown into a dusty drawer and forgotten. The fortress is probably still there, on that black ocean moon, empty, silent, save for the groan of metal and the crash of waves. A monument to a purpose that simply faded away. And we, the few who are left, we're just ghosts now. Not even ghosts that haunt anyone, just echoes, drifting through a galaxy that has long since moved on, haunted by the lives we lived, the people we were, and the countless pointless deaths we caused in the name of an order that never really existed. We sold our souls, our pasts, our very identities to become the perfect weapon. And in the end, the war changed, and the Empire just left its old, outdated weapons to rust in the rain.